Hello and welcome back, and that is right. Today we are looking at the Addlink A95 SSD for PS5. We've already done our review, we've talked about this drive a little bit, and this is the first of 3 individual tests that we're going to be running on this SSD. We're going to be looking at how it performs, how games handle with regards to frame rate, light, textures, pop in, pop out, AI, the works. And in today's video, we're looking at 4 games. We're going to be looking at Spider-Man Miles Morales. We've got a couple of tests there. We've got Lego Worlds, the open sandbox game. We've got Deathloop and Call of Duty Warzone. So all 4 of these games, we're going to be limiting internet connectivity either to 0 or as close as we can possibly get, with each game being handled slightly differently, and you'll see. But for now, as you can see there on screen, we've installed this SSD, and as you can rightly see, it is benchmarking the A95 at 6,556 megabytes per second, a clear 1,000 more than the recommended minimum. So we have high hopes for this SSD. But for now, let's proceed into the PlayStation 5 main menu there. And we're going to move these games over to the SSD. We're not only going to move these 4 games, we're also going to be moving over 4 other games that are going to move as form part of the next test. The reason we're moving them over is 1, for convenience of course, but 2, give you a heads up on those games in the next video, and finally also so we can have a larger amount of data moving over between these systems. So once again, we are looking at Miles Morales, we're looking at Lego, we're looking at Warzone, and we're looking at Deathloop. And in the next video in this series, we're going to look at Spider-Man Remastered, the PS5 version, Rocket League, Ghost of Tsushima, and Last of Us Part 2. So for now, let's go ahead and move these games over. Before we do that, let's double check on there. We can go to the settings menu, into storage, and again from storage we can see right there straight away there is our Addlink 2TB SSD. There's no games on it. So let's move these games over. So let's go ahead and move those over now. And again, we're moving all 8 of these games. One game I do want to highlight while we're doing the move, of course. Let's move them all there, and I'll talk about it in this video and the next, but I wanted to highlight it. But there's those 8 games, 4 for this video, 4 for the next. It's going to be just shy of 500 gig at 485 gig of data, and we're going to click move and move them over now. 3, 2, 1, go. Again, we're not measuring this move. If you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that there is some kind of compression technique or encryption or certification process while data is being moved from the internal SSD to an M2 or a USB and vice versa, that is causing a bottleneck. It makes testing and benchmarking write performance near enough impossible right now, but we're hoping to see more. Regardless of the SSD I've used, this always seems to take the same amount of time. A number of you did highlight in some of my previous videos that one of the games I'm testing in this series, The Last of Us Part 2, is a game that was originally on the PlayStation Now streaming service. I'm pleased to say that this game, although I have it on the PlayStation Now subscription, we are using the full data here on the PlayStation system here with internet connectivity disabled. So it is all happening on the system, regardless of it being the PS5 internal SSD, or if you're going to be utilizing an M2 SSD like this Addlink A95. But what I'm going to do now is fast forward to the full moving of this data over to the SSD, and then we're going to test today's 4 games. There's 4 games, but technically there are 6 tests when we conduct 2 different tests on one of these games. But for now, let's fast forward to the moving of this data. Okay, so the games have transferred over. If we go down into Spider-Man Miles Morales, for example, as you can see there, it's now residing on the M2 SSD storage, and the same goes for all those other games. In fact, if we go into the settings menu, we can have a good look at the available storage into the M2, and as you can see, all 8 of those games for this video and the next one have all been added. So let's go ahead and kick things off with Spider-Man Miles Morales. Although we are going to look at the loading of the game, as you can see here on screen, I will highlight that we're not comparing how long the game takes to get to the title screen. Because when we've looked at it previously between the 2 systems, this pop-up here is super annoying as we move games back and forth, and it only appears once you've first installed the game, or when you power down the system fully. Suspension and stuff, it gets rid of it. But long story short, rather than include all of these screens here, it was just easier to cut things and go straight from, in all of our comparisons, directly from the title screen and into the game, as you can see there. Largely also because sometimes there are different assets used for the title screen in these games. So for now, what we're going to be running from is loading straight into the city from the title screen here, and when we move into it from here, we're going to sort of go around the world a little bit, check out the frame rate, make sure there's no inconsistencies, and of course after that we're going to do our second test, which is a fast travel. So for now, let's cut in 3, 2, 1, go. Should be an exceptionally fast load, and here we are in the city. So again, we're going to make our way through. We're playing this game in the 30 frames per second optimal graphics mode. So again, we're not looking at 60 frames here, we're looking at targeted 30 with the best possible graphics. And what we're trying to do is push this as fast as we can and kind of get some of those lighting effects, some of the texture effects, basically get the game to have to work as hard as possible. I apologise for the clicks of the controller. I'm quite close to the mic there. Unfortunately, it is completely necessary to get this like this way, but for now it's still running absolutely fine for us there. And again, I would say I'm seeing no problems here. We're still maintaining the 30 frames targeted that we've seen previously with this mode. We could have gone for 60 frames mode, but I wanted to go for graphics and make sure that it was the storage that was working hard and not the CPU, GPU, because that would kind of remove where the focal point of what we're trying to do is. But for now, let's go ahead. We've got some sort of crime in progress, why not? But for now, let's go ahead and maybe play some of the game through, see if we can get any issues with any of the textures perhaps. But for now, I think that's fine. I think we're looking at things running as good as we would hope them to be. And for now, I think we can leave this area here and then get far enough away that we can action that fast travel, because that's what we really want to do. Because from there, just basically get the game to load in some new assets using the fast travel to a whole new area of the map, just to see if there's any delays. But for now, I think that's fine. So let's go in with fast travel, and we're going to fast travel, let's say, to the top of the map up here at the top left. Let's go for it there. We're going to start in 3, 2, 1. And lovely quick stuff there. We're on there onto the next area and we're running absolutely fine. So again, we'll get nice and high, get some of the views in there. But for now, this looks to me like it's running exactly the way that I would like it to run. And of course, there is a lot of reuse of textures in this, because a lot of the stuff to do with roads and stuff like that. So arguably, fast travel in this game, it doesn't send you to a whole new kind of region, because it has to be, you know, beared in mind that New York at its brick and mortar level is going to be quite similar in a number of areas. But for now, I'd say that's pretty good, and I think we can move on to our next game, which is Lego Worlds, of course. And from that one, we don't have to come out of it anything too expressive. We can just go straight out and go into Lego Worlds here. So Lego Worlds, again, Lego Worlds, hell of a slow loading game, this one. But at the same time, it's worth bearing in mind that in this frame of things, we're not looking at how long the game takes to load. What we're going to be loading is the open world kind of sandbox mode. This game is kind of a cross between No Man's Sky and Minecraft. And the mode we're looking at here is to push the largest possible area with all of the visual resources and effects all brought into that same area. And then what we're going to be doing is kind of moving forward within that world to double check that the game is handling those assets to the best of its ability. Again, it's a slow loader, impossible, but at least I can use this time to kind of explain the nature of these tests just a little bit. This is a game we've selected. I know it's by no means the most cutting edge game in all of the games that I've looked at here in all of my PS5 SSD testing, but it does have a lot of background loading. There's only one very obvious traditional loading screen in this game. The rest of the time, assets are loaded into the game very freeform, and it is kind of randomly generated in a number of areas as well. Consequently, as you make your way through the game, you can visibly see if the game is struggling, and the dips in frame rate, dips in texture quality become very, very apparent. Something I personally saw while looking at this game on the PS4 non-Pro. But for now, we're going to sandbox mode there, and what we want to do is create a brand new world. And in this brand new world, we're going to go for the biggest possible area. We're also going to include every single area that the game has to offer. So that means the game is going to have at least access or provision for all of these different textures and qualities. Of course, they are distributed around the entire playing area, but nonetheless, we've got them all there. So let's go ahead, and it's now going to create our dome. And from there, we can go ahead and go straight in 3, 2, 1, go. So first up is our rather more traditional and obvious load screen that we're going to see here on screen. And from there, we're going to go into the landing module where the assets, they've already started getting the bare bones nature of stuff put together during this loading area. And you can see on screen for you guys, internal SSD at the top left. On the top right is the Addlink SSD that we're testing here. So for now, we can see the remainder of the loading screen as the ship that we're flying makes its way into the world using kind of in-game loading, but definitely partial or hybrid, because we already saw that loading screen right there. And then from here, we can just immediately use the sandbox mode to spawn a vehicle, and from there, we can just immediately make our way through the world. Where it deposits us will be different each time, but for now, that doesn't matter too much, as we can just go ahead, create a vehicle, and then use that vehicle to very quickly excel through the map as fast as possible. So let's go ahead, and again, we're going to go for an air vehicle just because it's a great deal easier. And then from there, we can go ahead and basically travel through the area to see if the game is going to have any difficulties. Now, we've got camera control. It's going to stop hitting objects there. We can zoom straight in and use the internal view if we choose to, or we can go ahead and just maintain the external view. All we're looking at here is just pushing the system to have to draw in as many assets as possible. You can see the pop there as we go through. That's quite standard for Lego. There's not really anything wrong with the SSD while it's drawing that stuff in. That is quite normal. Again, where we would see a problem is if these textures were low texture polys that are getting pulled in, or if they were being introduced in a far more modular fashion rather than in this kind of wave area that's just out of our field of view. And again, sorry, I didn't check that there. If we go for the inside view, we can see that all the textures on this inside area here have been rendered perfectly there. And again, that's where we get our sort of close-up stuff from. But if we zoom back out, and unfortunately I've crashed into a surface there, which is not clever at all, we can go ahead and see if there's any areas here that we can go into in order to check the inside view of certain areas. I mean, again, rather than just waiting for something to be generated within this landscape, what we can do is just build one for ourselves. Let's go ahead and go to a landmass here beneath us. And we can just use the game's own internal mechanics there to just go ahead and create something. So let's go ahead and create a structure. Let's go ahead and just build something that we can go into immediately. Nice and easy. Barn house, bang, built. So we can go ahead and build that there. And then from there, go into the inside view. And then make sure that the game's own handling of the internal graphics is running okay. Can we go inside this structure? It'll be super annoying if we can't, but we can. As you can see, things are still running at just the right frame rate, and the game's running absolutely fine. So for me, that's absolutely fine. I think this is showing that the game is working the best that it can. So let's go ahead and move into our next test, which is going to be Deathloop. Okay, so let's start break the loop mode now, the single player, in 3, 2, 1. Make our way into the game here, and again, we're just going to be rushing forward, just going to push the game as much as we can. This game is not designed to be played in this fashion, and by playing outside of the usual slow play of this, we're hoping that we can use that to show off any problems with kind of textures as we close in, any of the AI stuff there. Ultimately, just try and push the game as hard as we can. So carry on moving through, and again, it's going to be a big old pile of enemies up ahead. All we're going to do is wake these guys up as quickly as we can. So again, we should get their attention, bring them forward, and hopefully get ourselves some nice, easy-going kills here. But again, all we're trying to do right now is just to show off how much we can do within the game as quickly as possible. So, and again, even if we die, it doesn't matter, because all we want to do is immediately restart and take advantage of the game's very fast regen mechanic. But again, we can't do that too much, and all we're going to be doing here is just showing that we can get as fast as we can through the level and show off to see if there's any problems. Lighting still seems to be fine from what I'm seeing here. Let's unpin that before we get ourselves killed by that. Again, the vibration there is so loud through the microphone, I do apologise for that. So, yeah, even when we're up close with the textures there, just like we've seen in games like Dishonored, that's where kind of the real high-res textures have a tendency to show themselves off. So for now, we can carry on and keep moving forward. But yeah, I think things are running fine there. We're seeing no difficulty in the game displaying all of those big textures there. Everything is looking just as good as I would like. And ultimately, I think that's a good enough test for this game. And we can make our way onto our fourth and final game, which is Call of Duty Warzone. So let's come out of Deathloop there. Go into Warzone. Now in Warzone, again, this is a game that's got an enormous amount of internet connectivity. You can't disable internet connectivity in Warzone. The game won't run without it. So what we're doing is running a Battle Royale mode, but we are going to be using bots only. That means that we can load up the game as we normally would, and it significantly reduces any kind of internet or network connectivity, and it allows us to get a much fairer test between this A95 Addlink SSD running the game versus the internal PS5 SSD. And again, I've mentioned this in other videos, I'll mention it here. In this case, the PS5 internal SSD capture, I'm sure it said it on the screen earlier, has been captured using the PlayStation 5's own internal recording there, whereas we're using a capture card for the SSD testing. We're using the capture card because if we come out of games, we can't maintain those recordings in the same way we can with isolated recordings. We can't have one long running set piece of recordings there. But for now, let's go into the Battle Royale practice mode and let's compare these two loading up against each other, as well as how they handle the individual assets on these games in 3, 2, 1, go. Making our way in, there's going to be an opening cutscene here. And again, this cutscene very marginally is pre-recorded footage. The rest is using in-game assets. So again, a lovely place to see if there's any texture drops or any problems from the SSD, any struggle. Again, it feels like it's loaded in fairly comparable time as we've seen previously. And of course, once we make our way on the ground, right away from the draw distance from above up until when we're on the ground, you're going to be able to be, it's quite clear there about the distance there in terms of what happens when graphics are swapped out for lower textures. So like we can rotate the camera, of course, while we're in this plane here. I will highlight, I've mentioned this in other videos as well, as much as I call it excuses. When I'm recording on the capture card, there is a slight delay between my inputs, what you see on screen. The result is that when I'm pressing a button, there's like a fraction of a second between it and its effect of what I'm seeing on screen and vice versa. So consequently, the PS5 recording I play better, but by no means significantly better than I do on the SSD recordings there. So for now, let's make our way to a nice safe high zone there. And from here, we're going to have a little look around, make sure we've got no issues with the textures. Seemingly running as good as we would like them to. But again, we're not going to go too far into the gas region there, because we do want to get a decent amount of recordings there for us to utilize in these videos. But for now, no sign of frame rate drops there. It's still running absolutely fine from what I can see there. Oh, we've got someone coming down, so we can go for it and take their weaponry, because I feel like we're going to need that. But I feel like I better make skedaddle plans. But still, nonetheless, I'm not seeing any problems there in terms of frame rate. I'm seeing no issues in terms of lighting. Yeah, everything I'm seeing so far is seemingly running as well as I would like. So again, making our way forward, we can go ahead and maybe get a little bit of high ground, see how things are running there. Because right now we've got textures on screen, of course, and we're not seeing a drop in frame rate, but we want to see how the game is handling the assets generally. This is a game that's available on a lot of platforms, a lot weaker than the PS5, so I don't anticipate any glaring problems between them, but still nonetheless, it's good to just be sure and kind of push around on the textures there on screen. Also, I'm doing an incredible job avoiding every sod on the map. And these are AI as well, they're not exactly backwards about coming forwards, but still nonetheless, I think that's a good enough test now. We've got the lighting, everything seems to look and run as well as I might like. But for now, let's go ahead, exit the game, and make our way onto the main PlayStation menu and move these games back onto the internal SSD so we can have a better understanding about that, and of course talk about everything we've seen today and summarize. So let's go into the storage, let's go into the M2 SSD, let's move just those 4 games over that we've tested thus far, because we've still got other tests to run for my next video. But for now, let's move Modern Warfare, Deathloop, and Miles Morales. Remember, we've still got those other 4 games to go. Let's move those games over to the internal PS5 SSD. So, again, Addlink are probably one of the first brands out there to have a PS5 targeted SSD, at least marketed as such, here on the market, and with an architecture that is pretty groundbreaking with that E18 controller and 176 layer 3D TLC NAND. There's a lot to like here. I've seen nothing in my performance testing, at least in this early video 1 of 3, where I'm seeing anything that makes me think this SSD is not going to be right for your PS5 upgrade, arriving at a price point arguably a little higher than some of the other ones out there, but of course you are paying for a quality device with that heatsink on board. And again, we've not heard the fan ramp up at any point, so again, a lovely sign there. I'm going to be interested to see if that is the case when we're looking at the QLC version, the A92. But for now, as far as test 1 goes, I like the SSD. I think for now, if you are looking at this, it does look like it's going to do the job, but maybe hold out on that decision a little bit longer until the complete range of tests on this SSD have been made. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Click like and subscribe if you have enjoyed this video. Of course, I'm going to do more testing on this, so if you do click subscribe, it means you'll be informed, or if you click the bell to be notified as further PS5 SSD tests on this SSD and others, as well as big comparisons between this entire range and other SSDs of a similar bracket, come out in the next 2 weeks or so. So do stay tuned for that. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time.